Hello everyone. You just all lost the chicken game. Present from Claire. How are we all doing? All good, I trust? Yes, all good here, thank you. Robert Norgren, no, not a chance. Yep, had a really nice Christmas break. Actually took some time off, which I haven't done very often for the past few years, so that was nice. I trust everyone is well fed and festived out. Oh wow, Firstus, congratulations. Wow, just 18 hours ago, that's crazy. Well done you. So why don't we start then by having a look at what I have been doing. I haven't done much over the past week, obviously, because of Christmas and drinking and such. But I have been doing some bits and pieces. So let's switch to Mini-Me. So one of the issues we've had, in fact one of the bugs we've got right now, is the game doesn't recognise that you have fully scanned a planet. And that's partially because of how we were storing that data. So I've changed how that data is stored. So what we do now is, rather than having some arbitrary booleans, which would be on the other struct that I don't have in front of me. Basically we had a boolean for long range scan and a boolean for medium range scan, and it just wasn't working doing it that way. So what we're now doing instead is we're just skipping that and doing it on a per body basis. So for each body in the system, we're storing the knowledge level just as an integer, 1, 2 or 3. So that's long, medium and short. And then we can control which little pips are visible on the sensor readout simply by checking to see whether the knowledge level exceeds the requirements, and indeed for displaying text signatures or not. So it's a much cleaner way of just handling what to show and what not to show. And on the setting of that, I've created a new macro whereby, again, rather than assigning some booleans, we are now updating the knowledge level on a per body basis. So this macro simply takes the knowledge level as an input and then checks to see whether that knowledge level exceeds that or not, and if not, or if it's lower than rather, then we update it with a higher knowledge level. Nice and simple. And if there's no match on that, then we construct the array to contain all of the bodies within that system. So we count how many objects there are, and that gives us our explorable bodies number. And then we go through each of those bodies. We set the ID as the object seed, and then the knowledge level is obviously whatever knowledge level we've given the macro. And then it just updates that and sends out with a rep notify so that it's available to all clients. So on the whole, this whole system is a lot more robust. It allows us to store and track exploration data a lot more efficiently. but obviously that now needs to be updated in all the places where it is referenced. So I've just done, earlier today, I did the medium range one, which is this. So what I will do, I just copy that. I should be able to do the exact same thing on the long range version of it as well, which would be this one. Obviously we need to calculate that differently now, and this won't be arbitrary like it was before. So before, a long range scan gave you a simple 10%, a medium range scan boosted it up to 25%, but now it's obviously based on how many planets there are within the system, so it needs to add up the total percentage across the board, and then work out how much of that has actually been explored. So it should give you a higher number than the fewer planets there are within that system. Where are we? So here. So this is the struct we're working from. So these two booleans here are no longer being populated, so they're no longer needed. So where we now calculate this depends on the individual planets. So all of that pretty much can go. Yeah, I think we'll keep that for a minute. So we need to do a for each on, on this. You can get rid of that and that because it's not needed. Right, how are we going to do this? So we need to add up. To add on each of these. So for each of these, we got our knowledge level. So I guess we need our total. So if we take however many bodies there are, and then we multiply that by 3, obviously knowledge level 3 is the full short range scan, so that gives us our total possible value if we add them all together. So then we could do with just appending this to a temporary variable rather than making a set variable for it. So I don't know whether there's a way of getting local variables outside of macros, because if you type something like local integer, you can't create one. But if you make a macro and we make a local integer, we now have a completely local integer which you can then use outside of the macro. So it's odd that you can't create them outside of the macro, but you can use them outside of the macro. And again, you can't create the assign node outside of the macro either. There's probably a reason for this, but I find them so useful to be able to just store a value, especially if you're looping through an array, without having to create a whole variable for it. Just creating the variable bloat at that point. Right, so I'll take our local integer. We will zero that out actually before we start, because it does remember its value oddly. So we set it to 0, and then for each looping of the array, we will take that, and we will add that. So basically we're just incrementing that as we go. We don't need those. Add a few reroutes on here just to clean it up a bit, so don't get spaghetti spam. Right, so that should be our total combined knowledge level. And then so if we then divide that by our calculated maximum possible value, I'm just actually questioning myself here as to whether or not this explorable bodies integer is actually needed. I mean, this is basically this, so I could actually just do that, just to make life a little bit easier. I'll work out further down the line whether I want to keep that one or not. Now obviously, that divided by that needs to output a float. I've fallen foul of this before, where it will let you divide an integer by an integer, which obviously you can't do because it doesn't support decimals, and yet it lets you do it and then gives you some nonsensical answer. Right, we don't. It's the other thing, the other gotcha that keeps plaguing me is I'll always hook things up to the loop body rather than the completed pin. Right, so we add up our total knowledge level, we divide that by the total possible knowledge level, and that should give us our percentage. Which we then times by 100 for display purposes and use that to drive the progress bar. Right, and that should be enough. So let's see whether that is enough or not. Okay, I think that's possibly working. So we're showing 33%. Need to update this one as well. So this is correctly showing 10% explored because the Boolean is set previously. But it's showing 33% since we've changed the data. So it's correctly picking up that each one of these has a level 1 scan. Right, let's calculate this a minute. How many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are 7 objects. So 7 times 3 is 21. So 21 is our maximum. And then obviously we've got 7 at level 1. So 7 divided by 21 is 0.33333. Yes, that is correct. All right. Try that one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've also got 7. That's not very helpful, is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Why do all these systems have 7 planets? Well, that's weird. These shouldn't have text signal on them. Right, so there's a lot more planets here. So that percentage should be smaller. So let's do a
Initiating long-range survey.
Ah, thank you, Ian.
Long-range survey complete.
Right, so it's not updating the pips. Right, need to make sure it's forcing the update of this. See, I need to get my head around that now. So they're both 33%, even though there's more of them. I suppose the reason is the same number, because it's the same... Yeah, I guess it's the same equation, isn't it? We're just making... It's the same fraction, just with a bigger number. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So where this should now differ is if we were to do a detail scan on one of these bodies, then this number would change precisely based on that single body scan. And the reason we had to change this, and the reason we have to do it this way round, is to cater for situations where someone flies into a star system and then doesn't bother doing a survey. They just fly straight up to a planet, do a short range scan of that planet, and then nothing else. And previously, that would result in a 0% on here, because obviously you skipped the 2 surveys. So as far as this is concerned, you haven't surveyed that system. But now that we're tracking it on a per body basis, a short range scan of a single planet will increase this number. In fact, let's prove that. Just for my own satisfaction. Actually, no, we can't yet. Yeah, exactly, Cloud. Yeah, exactly. And for some reason in my head, I was thinking if there were fewer objects, then the percentage would be higher, because because exploring 2 objects to 10% should be a bigger percentage overall than exploring 10 objects to 10%. But of course, ultimately, it's the same fraction overall, which is why it's still 33%. My maths isn't great, to be fair. Yes, Ian. So the single planet will be scanned to 100%, but obviously that 100% is obviously then compared against all of the planets in that system. Greetings, Dave. Welcome to the stream. Right, where are we? So that is what should have fired when the scan completed. and I don't think it did. Let me just make sure that's... Yeah, we're definitely hooking up the output pin, so... That's definitely on the completed pin. That's definitely on the completed pin. That is definitely on the completed pin. So, yeah, that should have gone through. Do a bit of spam there just to make sure. Right, so the short range then is going to again be slightly more complicated. Hey Darius, yes, thank you. I'm definitely still having fun. It's yeah, it's still enjoyable, you know, despite pressures and deadlines and needing to get stuff done. You know, I'm definitely still enjoying it. Yes, Ian. So the central star does count as one of the bodies in the system. So a star and 3 planets would give you your 25% if you scanned one of them to knowledge level 3. Because the total for that system would be 12, wouldn't it? So you've got 3 for the star, 3 for each planet, so that's a total of 12. And then obviously 3 is 25% of 12. So scanning one of them to 3 should give you your 25%. At least that's how it should work. We'll double check in a minute to make sure it does. Right, so I'm going to copy paste some or all of this. Yeah, all, I think. I was trying to make a macro where I could just handle all 3 scanning types with the same macro, which is fine for the 2 survey modes because you're just adding the same value to every planet. But obviously with the short range scan, we're having to pick and choose which planet we're working with. So let's just park that over there a minute. Yeah, I was having a conversation with Claire the other day actually about speed of working, motivation, and how previously in the past I've got more done more quickly. And it's very much the case that because we are working on set patches now with set deliverables and, as much as we always miss them, set timescales, I'm no longer free to just go off on a tangent and just suddenly decide on a whim to build something that I suddenly think is shiny at the time. So in that sense, because I don't have the freedom to just work on whatever I want when inspiration takes me, I don't work on those things as enthusiastically. I guess it's the same with anything. When you turn what is your hobby into a job, it becomes a job. So, when I sit down at my desk and, I have to work on the sensors because the sensors need to get finished. Some days I really can't be bothered to work on the sensors, but I have to. So, in that sense, it can become a bit of a grind. Whereas, I just want to go and work on some shiny planet thing, which, happens to inspire me at the time. So yeah, so there is an element of that to it, definitely. But that's par for the course. Once you start doing things in a more structured, business-like way, then that's just the nature of the beast. You have to. I think that's where personal discipline comes into it. You have to just grit your teeth and get on with the job. Yeah, definitely, Siando. It's, and I do. There's often a little bit of feature creep, and I try to keep it to a minimum. If I feature creep too much, then Claire starts beating me. But yeah, she allows a bit of feature creep here and there. That's why we have chairs that you can roll around on in the game. That was definitely one of those, 3 a.m. random inspiration moments. I thought, ooh, wouldn't it be cool if you could roll around on the chairs? So of course I spent the next day working on it. Yeah, I'm basically hoping to get to the point where once we have enough staff doing things that need to be done, then that frees me up to do things that I want to do. So I can just go off on whatever tangent I want to go off on and just let inspiration guide me, because we've actually got paid staff members doing the stuff that needs to be done, which will free me up a bit just to make more wheelie chairs and whatever else I think is funny at the time. Yeah, the pool table. The pool table is there and waiting for the time when I have a spare 5 minutes to actually implement some pool gameplay. I'm sure Claire will allow me at some point. Yeah, talking about having paid staff on board is a little bit weird. I mean, we've been working with contractors really since day one, so paying a contractor is no mystery to us. But having someone actually on the books, that's going to be a weird one. That's like real studio territory. Although we have an office now, so that's a start. Right, let's try and make sense of this. Sorry, shed, yes. That's good to hear, Delta. Hopefully it won't take too much longer. I guess that's where I started, Simply Don't Roll. I mean, I started building the refit in Unreal Engine just as a walking simulator, just to walk around and play with it. And then, of course, I joined Stage 9 and started working with them on what was something very similar to this. So it just made sense to just keep going in that same direction. I always wanted to make this game. I always wanted a game where I could live aboard my starship whilst exploring the galaxy. And because I really like ArchViz work, and I did ArchViz as a hobby, it made sense to take that ArchViz knowledge, turn that into a game, and just build everything around that. So it kind of leverages my love of astrophysics and my love of ArchViz and my love of starships and my love of sci-fi, and just like squish them all together, and boom, there's your game. Some oddly shaped balloon animal. And then just, because I'm a masochist, I also made it multiplayer. Architectural visualization. So basically, modeling an environment in 3D as realistically as you possibly can. Paying attention to the lighting, to the surface materials, and the physical structure of everything. Obviously, I was doing it with starships, so taking a sci-fi environment, which I know and love, and then recreating that as a 3D model. Turning that into a game was, kind of the natural progression. Yeah, it would be nice to have a snooker table somewhere. I've actually never heard of that game, Simply Don't Roll. I'll have to have a Google. Right, okay, let's see if we can untangle the spaghetti a minute. So... So for a start, we want to cut that out. And then we need to pop that in there. No longer using that. Okay, and then we will turn this one into... I suppose it doesn't need to be a macro, actually. There's the output. Okay, and then when these ones also have some kind of on-screen animation activity, we will sort that out with this as well. So we can start and stop the animations on the widget as needed. Right, so for this one we're taking a different set of coordinates, and we are checking against that. Okay, so if we have a match, we are recording our array index, and we're then getting the object at that index. Why are we doing that? Why don't we just do that? Why did I do that? Today, yes, as CSI points out, I am fixing the sensors some more. So basically, we're about 2 weeks behind where I wanted to be. Prior to Christmas, I had that stupid kidney stone, which, touch wood, seems to have not caused any kind of issues now over the past week. So hopefully that's on its way. And then, of course, Christmas happened, and that involved a lot of family coming round and a lot of sitting around socialising. So, yeah, we're about 2 weeks behind putting the build out. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just fixing a few bugs with the way scanning was being stored and recorded, because that was just causing us a few issues. And when it comes to actually generating a lot of the text output on the sensors screen, the way we were storing it was making it more difficult. So I've removed the scroll bar off of here because it was not needed. So this is just a simple panel now that will just give you a bit of a blurb. Actually, it's worth talking about the way I'm looking at this sort of semantically. On the long-range sensors, what it's showing is not necessarily a list of star systems. It's showing you a list of subsectors. So if we think of our sector as that 100 light year cube, then each square or each cubic light year within that sector is a subsector, of which there are a million. So 100 times 100 times 100 is a million, so you've got a million subsectors. So each one of these represents 1 cubic light years worth of space, i.e. a subsector. Now right now, all we have is star systems, so you'd be forgiven for assuming that this is just a list of star systems. But what we'll also have showing up on here will be other ships, so they'll show up on long range, if they're within range, and they may just show up as interstellar space. So rather than saying G-class star, it will actually say interstellar space, and then what's actually there. So it could say something like distress signal, or X, Y, and Z vessel. So that's what all this is about. So if we think of each of these as 1 cubic light year of space, that's what we're surveying when we do the survey. So we view the detail of that subsector, and then the survey essentially scans everything within that 1 cubic light year, if that makes sense. And obviously each one of those items has a data readout here. You can see that I have, if I zoom in on that, I've started adding the data in a much better formatting, or with much better formatting even. So in the same here, so on the star, it now does that more nicely. And I've started doing it here as well. I just need to get rid of the old text and use the new text. I want to turn these into macros as well, for the simple reason that the output you have on the medium range, and indeed the short range, is basically the same information. So that is the same as that, which is the same as that, or rather, that. So if all of these are macros, then all I need to do is tell the macro which text fields are we actually updating as part of that macro, which means I only then need to do that job once rather than having to do it again and again and again for each of the different sensor modes. So really, I'm working on all of them all at once. And once those 2 macros are built, then that is essentially the sensors done for the most part. So hopefully that can be quite quickly done. Yes, to a point there, CSI, because every sector location, i.e. subsector, has a type associated with it. So if we go to our Galaxy Gen here, no, not that one, that one. You can see here that we're specifying a location type. So the location type in this instance is whatever class star this is. Hang on. Oh no, that's the filter. Right, so here, so you can see that the location type is a star system. So these are all the different location types we have right now. So you could theoretically, although we don't have a column for that yet in the SQL data, so I need to add that. But you can add any one of these different things as what that subsector actually is. So right now, obviously, all of them are set to star system because that's all we have. But yes, it could very easily at this point be a rogue planet. In fact, we're completely set up for spawning rogue planets now. We just aren't for the minute. So we could set rogue planet as the subsector type, which means that it would just spawn a rogue planet within that 1 light year cube, and that's it. That's basically what lives there. So all we need to do over time is expand this list really to infinity with whatever we can think of to put in space. And then, obviously, if it's a vessel, then that's either a vessel that's on the move or it's an abandoned vessel or something like that. But that's basically how the system works on the back end. So when we're looking at it on the sensors, obviously we need to know what that subsector actually consists of. But that will start to make more sense once we actually have more there on the list. Right, where was I? Oh yes, this mess. Yeah, wormholes are an interesting one. I'm on the fence as to whether or not to place wormholes outside of star systems or have them within a system. It would be better in a way to have them just as an object that's orbiting the star or orbiting a planet. So we treat a wormhole like any other celestial object. So you actually have to go into the system to find them. The question is, do we have them show up on a long-range scan? How rare do we want them to be, and how readily do we want them to be come across when people are exploring? If we make them visible on a long-range scan, then they should be fairly easy to find. Yeah, Ben, they could definitely be both. Again, when we've got a million subsectors to play with per sector, then we're certainly not short on space to spawn things. So we could place a wormhole right in the middle of a empty space somewhere. But again, that goes back to how do we want that to be discovered? Do we want it to be discovered as the player just happens to be flying through, within a couple of light years of it? Or do we want it to be something you can see from a long way away? Yeah, the wormholes are definitely going to come in two different flavors. So we're going to have stable and unstable versions of wormholes. Sorry, just pouring some tea. I'm not peeing, honest. British stream, must have tea. Which is probably like excruciatingly hot. Yeah, it definitely is. Thank you, Claire, by the way, for making me tea. Yeah, so the unstable wormholes will have a fixed entry point, and will just exit anywhere in the galaxy. We'll probably have it so the exit point is anywhere within a certain region of space, maybe within a couple of 100 light years, and you won't know beforehand, where that goes. And once you go through an unstable wormhole, you'll never find the way back through it again. So they're very much a one-way wormhole. And I quite like those because, you know, they are an adventure in their own right, because, you know, the moment you fly into that wormhole, you have no idea where you're going to end up and how long it might take you to get home. So that's very much like a Voyager-esque mission, that one. The stable ones, we'll just have them, you know, set up with a stable entry point at both ends, and then you can just fly through them freely. So we'll probably have a much lesser number of stable wormholes across the galaxy. Some placed manually, the bulk of them placed procedurally, and then a lot more unstable wormholes, which will just be fully procedural. So again, you know, even I won't know where they go because they're procedurally generated. Yeah, it's not even soda, it's just plain whiskey. But yeah, so, you know, when it comes to scanning, because what we don't want is, we don't want the scanning gameplay to be too sort of click and forget. So, you know, you do your long range scan, now you know what's in a star system. You know, you turn up at that star system, you do your medium range scan, and now you know all about its moons and what type of planets there are, etc, etc, etc. It's all very kind of one click and now you know everything. It doesn't give any space for like dynamic events and things which you might miss if you're not scanning at the right time. So we definitely want to roll some of that into it, and for that reason, actually, I've removed the fact that it disables the survey after you've completed it, so you can rerun the survey again and again as many times as you want, because at some point we want things to be you know, time dependent. So there might be something that only shows up on sensors intermittently, so we definitely want to cater for that. In the same way, like when it comes to wormholes, you know, we want them to be only visible from a fairly close distance away. So if you're not running a scan at that moment as you're flying through that area, you'll miss the fact that the wormhole is there. So obviously we'll you know, we need to play test this and balance it, but that's the general idea. It gives the, you know, the sensors guy more gameplay in terms of actually doing active scans, rather than just, you know, survey and then wait for the next system. Yeah, business hours wormholes. I definitely want at some point to have more of a visual. I don't want to say mini game, because I think mini games cheapen the experience. So we don't want to do a mini game for the sake of doing a mini game, because that's just, you know, an arbitrary bit of nonsense. We want it to actually be relevant to something. So I think perhaps more on the comms side of things, where we will have you know, various signals of various different frequencies, and you'll actually have to, you know, tune the comms into those frequencies, which means, you know, a bit of matching frequencies and maybe scanning for, you know, for frequencies that are actually transmitting. So more active involvement in the identifying of a signal without making it a meaningless minigame, if that makes sense. So yes to more interactivity, no to minigames. I keep forgetting what I'm doing. Right, let's tidy up some of these pins a minute. Right, so we've got that one there. Also goes down there. Right, so if we have a matching location, okay, we need to know all of the systems within that location, which we then need to loop through. Okay, then we're looking for the seed. Yeah, well, eventually things will have more levels to them. So, like with the life data, with the alien civilizations, right now, doing a short-range scan of their homeworld will just tell you everything about them from beginning to end. We will be locking that information behind a lot more stuff. So things like artifacts, and then speaking to them and unlocking various chunks of their history and culture through performing science on artifacts that you've obtained from them. So there will be more depth to it as we add those things. I guess the issue right now, obviously, is that there isn't a lot there to unlock in the first place. So it's difficult to add complexity where the data on the back end isn't ready for it. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just making sure that we've got all of this happening the way, or rather in the order that it needs to happen in, and indeed that it makes sense at the time. Right, we'll move on to that bit after. So that shouldn't be relevant. Right, so this is our list of explored locations. So this is what we've explored in the past. We loop through that list looking for the coordinates of that system. Once we've found a match, or rather if we've found a match, then we set this boolean to true to indicate that a match has been found. And then we capture the array index for that system. But I think rather than doing that, if we make a wildcard local variable, then we can store that separately. I think I may have created one earlier. Yeah, that one. So we grab that and that. So we don't need that or that. Instead, we'll assign that instead. we've captured our matching location, we now need to loop through that. To be honest, I may as well do that. So we loop through and we look for our matching seed. Okay, if we don't have a match, we do nothing. Okay, if we do have a match, so why am I doing that? Because surely I can just do that. There might be a reason I did this. And it's probably something to do with the fact that what we don't want to do is work on a copy of the data, because if we do, then we're not actually updating the source data, so that when we replicate that out, obviously we want to be using the data contained within this array, not a copy of it. That might have been why I was capturing the array index there. Although this is part of that array, so this one's fine. So why don't we use that directly and maybe not need that? So we're still referencing the same source array, and then we are setting members on that. Means we don't need that. And then rather than setting that, we are instead setting our knowledge level to 3. Yeah, and then once that's done, we are breaking the loop there. Which means we don't need that. Right, and then if we didn't find a match, so this is the part which is needed if you visit a system and just scan a single planet without doing any surveys, because we need to now construct the data for the scanned objects, which means adding the right number of array entries for those planets, and then setting them all to 0, apart from the one that we've just scanned. Right, so find a matching system, find a matching planet, update the knowledge level accordingly, and all of that should be referencing all the way back to here, which means it should still be valid here. Okay, and then if that is false, yeah, that's where we add the new one. So do I need this? So this Boolean is basically, yes, we found a matching planet, but there will always be a matching planet. So that's always going to return true because when we set them up now, either there will be all the planets or none of the planets. So if we find a match in the data, then it means there's already all of the planets. So that becomes meaningless. We'll still loop back and cancel the loop because we don't want it just looping when it doesn't need to. So that does therefore mean that that is now irrelevant. So all of this is kind of redundant. But yeah, just get rid. So what we do actually need to do then is we need to basically copy this and that and that. So if we get rid of that, do this instead. Make sure we clear the array before we start working with it. Right, so that's our explored bodies. So we've got our sector location details. Those are all the satellite objects. Oh, it needs a vector, doesn't it? Have I missed that out on the other one? You know what? I think I did. No, I didn't. It's there. Probably better that I do it from here because this is taking it from the source data rather than what we've passed through to the variable, to the macro rather. Okay, so then we go through that. We don't need to do that anymore. That becomes our output, which means that goes onto there. Okay, so there's a slight difference here. So rather than, so on the long range and the medium range, We know that everything needs to be the same knowledge level because it's a survey. For a directed scan, only one planet needs that. So we're going to actually have to check. Which means we need that. So as we're looping through the objects in the system, we need to see whether or not that equals that. And if we do a select off of that, that drives this. So if it's matching, then that's the one we've just scanned. Otherwise, it needs to be unscanned at 0. And then again, we're only doing this if there was no match up here. So if there are no matching systems within the data pool, that remains false. So we have to set up that data. So all of them can be 0, except the one we're scanning. That should be it. Let's give that a try. Doesn't help that I've got 2 of these actually, so what's that other one for? So update short range scan data, that's the one we wanted. That's the one we've done. So what's this one? Oh right, yeah, that was going to be the other macro I was going to make, which we don't actually need. Yeah, so that's not actually used for anything, so that can go away because it's muddying the waters. So that's a survey, that's your single object, so that should be it done. Right, let's give that a whirl and see. Did it scan it? That's the question. I don't think it did. Okay, so no data there yet. see whether that's true or false to begin with. Oh, gotta love magnesium. I blew the corner off my step at my old house with magnesium. I had like a roll of it, and I decided to set fire to it because that's the kind of teenager I was. And yeah, the whole thing just exploded. Wasn't expecting that at all. Okay, so that's not seeing the data. Interesting. Right, okay. That means that we are not actually saving it. So we're not finding a match here, which means that we're creating the data here. So we definitely got that. Hey, Archer. This is called having a shower and then going straight to bed with wet hair. I did brush it, honest. Yeah, it shouldn't need to, Ian. So the whole point of this is to enable you to go directly to a planet or star, scan only that planet or star, and then not bother with a survey. So on your sensor screen, you should see one object scanned to knowledge level 3 with all of the information unlocks that brings, and everything else still be at 0. So this bit here is when you encounter a brand new system that you've never been to before. It will try and find existing exploration data, which it will fail to find because obviously the coordinates don't match. So it will always try and then create new data. So once it's gone through the process of creating the new data, that should always then return true because it's found the data you've just created. So what it's doing is it's obviously not adding that to there. The question is why? Although we can test the theory on the long range just to be sure. Hey, Celtic Gundam. All good now, thank you. I've not been in any pain for over a week, so I think it's gone. I like to keep my hair exciting. Right, so here's the system we've not yet explored. Everything is on 0. Right, so if we do the survey,
Initiating long-range survey.
Hush, Ava.
Long-range survey complete.
Now it's not refreshing. However, if we go back into it, oh, it's still not showing. Interesting, but it is showing it there. But not there. but definitely there. Okay. Oh, now it is showing it there. Oh, that's annoying. Nothing worse than an intermittent bug. But it is adding the data to the array. So that's definitely working. Okay. But the short range isn't. Right, okay. Yeah, I have a suspicion that it's not doing this properly, or it's not doing it with permission. So in order to be able to set do a rep notify, you need to be doing it as the server. So it might be that these are not picking up authority, so it's not actually doing that. I will have to double check. But the code here is the same as the code on here. So it should be updating just the same. The only thing I can think of is it's not matching. Yeah, this seed comparison must be returning false, because then it's setting everything to 0. But then not that either, because even if it was all 0, they'd still be there, which means this should then return true. Which means that that isn't happening, or that isn't happening. So okay, we're definitely defaulting that one to false, and we're only setting it to true if there's a match. And we're not seeing this, so it's definitely returning false, which means we're definitely following this pin here when that completes. So which bit isn't it doing? I think this calls for more spam. Well, let's see whether or not we're actually marking one down as a match. So one of them should return 3, and the rest should be 0. We're definitely setting members on the right data, which we're assigning from there. Yep, so we're making our struct. We're assigning the coordinates and the number of explorable bodies to that struct. And then for each satellite object in the source data, we are adding to our local array. So we've got an array here, which is a local array, so it doesn't exist as a variable anywhere. And we're simply adding however many satellite objects there are. That's how many entries we're adding to the array, and we're adding each one as our exploration data, in which we're setting our knowledge level and our ID. And then we are, when we're done, we are updating our exploration data with that array. So we've already set up, so it's the same variable. We've already set up this, and now we're adding this, which gives us our data to add to the master array, and then we're replicating that out after we've added our array entry to it. So all of that is logical and flowing as we'd expect it to. I suppose the easiest way to check this is to see whether or not we're incrementing this array at all. So if we get the length of the array, get rid of that a minute. We'll do this one as text. There are that many array items. Oh. Help if I use the right node. So there are that many array items. That's how many we start with. And then here we'll recount our array. There are now that many. Let's make sure that we leave that on screen long enough to see it. And the same there. Right, that should be a decent amount of spam. Yes, CSI. So one of the things that I need to do probably in the next update cycle is, in order to prepare for things like moons, we basically need to split the star system data up into essentially a flat table. So we have things like berry centers, multiple stars, planets, moons, and moons of moons, or moons. We have all of them in a flat table with obviously unique identifiers for each one, and then whether or not that object is a child of another object in that table is basically the unique identifier. So we'll have like a child of row, column rather, so a child of column, and then for each row you've got the unique ID of the parent for that particular row. I think that's probably the cleanest way to store the data, and it's easily indexable as well at that point. So we only need then the one SQL table to store all of the data, and then just make sure that we rely on those unique identifiers to tie them together, because we don't want to do array joins and things, or table joins. At that point, we should have everything we need on the table in order to add everything we need. So you can then start adding things like rogue planets or whatever. And assuming that the game is set up to then spawn those objects, then they should appear in the game world. Yeah, so there will be a simple type column. Because when it comes to adding, and this is something I'll be doing during the next patch cycle, is the tool for backers to start actually designing star systems. So in order to implement that data on the back end, obviously we need that database structure in order to support that. So this is good for many different reasons, because having a flat table with unique identifiers that can reference between parents and children enables us to have multi-star systems like straight away, pretty much. As long as we've got berry centers as an object type in order to, obviously make the stars orbit around something. Yeah, that should work. Yeah. But yeah, I think it should all work as a flat table. It's going to be a monstrous table, but then the real world stellar data is something like 18 million rows, so it's never going to be that big, and that we can query that in less than 10 to 15 milliseconds, so it's probably going to be fairly rapid. And yeah, we're going to have probably a sector ID, and then from the sector ID we'll then have system IDs on top of that, because I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Yeah, because one of the things that we need to do is with all of the customization stuff for not just the backer systems but also our GM tool that we're going to be building at some point. We want to give players the ability to drive the galaxy, and obviously the galaxy is generated with the procedural systems, so we're basically handing the keys to the procedural systems over to players so that you can fine-tune all the different variables and tweak and set up entire sectors based on that input data. So, and this is something I discussed on the Discord, is it's actually easier to give backers an entire sector to work with than it is a single system, because of the way the galaxy is generated. Again, we've got like several 100 million sectors to play with, so it's not like we're running out anytime soon. So yeah, so we need to work out how we're doing that. So it's probably the case that our Commodore level backers who have an actual FTL civilization within their data, they'll have to have an entire sector's worth of space assigned to them for that scenario that they're configuring for their race. And again, that then needs to be in the data. So we need all the different star systems and all of the race data all in that same table. So each row is going to have probably 100 columns. It's going to be pretty crazy, but we'll see. We'll see just how much data we need to generate. A lot, though. It's going to be a lot of data. Hey, the V. Am I planning to focus on engineering again? Yes. The whole ship still needs to be finished, so there's still a lot more work to be done in engineering. I'm not sure when at this point, but yes. Because our general idea for getting to early access, because that's our focus right now. So our number one goal is to get to early access as quickly as possible with the full feature set that we want to include, at least at the basic level, for early access. And that's everything from all the different roles on the ship to planetary landings. So it's a question of what is the most efficient route of getting there. Obviously, the full ship interior and exterior needs to be finished for early access. So that's like job number one. Job number two is every role aboard the ship needs to have at least something to do relevant to their role. So we were trying to split this up into bite-sized patches, because one of the things we always do and have done for the past 3 years is we've made patches too big. This most recent one is the worst that it's ever been. this has been a 6-month patch. It's been crazy. And actually, no, longer than that. Much longer, in fact. Probably almost a year. It's been absolutely ridiculous. For 2 reasons. 1, we completely ripped the ship apart. And 2, we completely ripped the sensors apart. So we broke 2 of the main parts of the game, which means that we couldn't then release anything at all until those 2 things have been finished. So we kind of shot ourselves in the foot by removing the ability to release incremental patches. So we will not be doing it again. I said that last time, but this time we really won't be doing that again. We need to make sure that every patch that we release is small and focused and not too bloaty, so that we can then build those patches fairly rapidly. So our road from here to early access should be paved with tiny little patches, and then each one of those patches should bring something that's needed for early access. So for example, the very next patch after this one is going to be a helm NPC, a sensor NPC, and the ability to be the captain on the bridge. So interact with the holo display and give those 2 NPCs commands. So be it single player or multiplayer, you should be able to be the captain and at least order the ship around. And then the patch after that will be focusing on sublight flight, the ability for the ship to collide with things, and wormholes, which is colliding with stuff as a prerequisite to wormholes. So every patch is going to bring something new towards early access, and more engineering stuff is definitely going to be part of that. Not least of which the engines. They're going to require modeling and hardware and pipes and cables and all the other infrastructure that they'll need. Yeah, exactly, CSI. Yeah, we won't do that again. In fact, the last time I said that is because we'd had a particularly weighty patch, which took too long. So I said, right, we're never doing that again. We're only going to do small patches from now on. And then, of course, I made the mother patch after that. Yeah, so the Galaxy is definitely going to change a fair bit over the coming months because, as you say, we want the 3D model to the Galaxy rather than the 2D bitmap that we're using. It takes roughly 20 milliseconds to read the pixel value from that bitmap, and 20 milliseconds may not sound like a lot, but when you're having to do that 27 times, that's 27 times 20 milliseconds, so you're looking at a couple of seconds. That's how long it takes just to read the bitmap. It's crazy. It's a crazy amount of time just to read a static image. So by making that mathy rather than just using a black and white height map, it means that we can generate the sector data far more efficiently. And if we use the model that we have for the Galaxy, which is based on actual real world data, it means that the 3D structure of the Galaxy takes on that Pringle shape that it has in the real world, which means that we actually have a mathematically correct model for the Galaxy. And of course that's going to change every star system. That aside, we have some other bits and pieces that still need to be added to the Galaxy. It is fairly robust, and I've designed it in such a way where every sector is independent, so we could change one sector in isolation without affecting any of the other sectors in the Galaxy. And we can also we can change a star class and only have that individual star class be affected. But where you can cause hiccups with that is, say it's sprinkling some stars within a sector. if you then place a manual system somewhere where the procedural system wants to put something, then it has to then recalculate every other star from that point. So within that given sector, those stars in that particular class will suddenly change their location and type. So there's definitely scenarios where the galaxy can be changed, but it's very rare that we'll change the whole galaxy all at once. But it will happen, guaranteed, between now and release. Yeah. If we showed subsectors when they were empty, that would be one hell of a lot of scrolling you'd have to do. When you say Trojan planets, AJ, do you mean planets which have arrived from outside of the system, or do you mean rogue planets between stars? I mean, rogue planets between stars, definitely. We can practically do that already. Trojan planets, if you mean a planet joining a star system, yes, but we'd have to program it specifically. So we'd have to... Oh, I see what you mean. So like when one planet follows another around the orbit. Yes. I mean, I suppose you could have like one either side of the star, because that could be quite interesting. So you have like a planet and then a Trojan on the opposite side of the star to that planet, and the two will never know that each other exists because the star is always in the way, blocking the other one. That could be quite interesting, actually. Yes, it's entirely possible, although we haven't coded for it yet, so yeah, it's just a case of yes, it just needs to be added, but there's nothing about the system that makes that impossible. So yeah, we can definitely add them. Right, let's scan this a minute. Right, so that's telling us that we did not increase the size of the array, which is interesting. Let's just do another scan of that a minute. One of them should say 3. Yeah, it does. So, okay, so we're definitely identifying the planet, and we're definitely giving it the correct number, but we're not... Oh, hang on. That time we did increase the array. Oh. Interesting. So... Oh, okay, that did work. Right, so yeah, so this one planet has been fully scanned, so that gives us 12% there. So 12% of the system has been explored. Huzzah. It's not showing it on the medium range or the short, which is odd because it's the same widget element, so interesting. All right, so if I do a survey then.
Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete.
not updating? Let's try medium range. KKK. Right, so we know this is definitely working. So I'll keep this in a minute for a minute because I have a feeling it might be not doing it the first time, but then if you do it again, it does it, which is weird. The wormholes will essentially be a bit like snakes and ladders. So if you fly into a wormhole, then you can't stop halfway through it. You'll get spat out the other side. So you won't be able to fly into a wormhole, turn around and fly back out again. So once you're through it, and that's that. See you, Team Ready. Have a good one. Yeah, it's definitely something like that, Ian. It's probably one of those chicken and egg problems where it's generating something before, or it's trying to read it before it's generated it. But let's have a look at this one a minute. So. Yes, we do have a system already for doing proper lensing around black holes, but right now it's only actually doing the black hole accretion disk. It can lens space around the black hole, but in order to do that we need to write to a scene capture essentially. So we're recording a video of a 360 space around the black hole in order to then apply lensing to that texture, which is quite costly, which is why I turned it off. I want a solution which works on the scene texture instead, but that's a work in progress. If I can do it as a post-process effect, I'd much rather do it that way, because then we don't need to run a scene capture at like 30 FPS or something to keep it updated. But yes, that is the goal. Nothing in the game should ever be linked to real world funds, so that should never be an issue. Yeah, for sure. When it comes to actually doing the FTL effect with lensing and everything, we definitely do want to do that. I think I do want to limit that to when you start and stop the engine, because as you're flying through space, it's nice to see the stars drifting by. And if we were doing it like completely realistically, then you probably wouldn't see anything outside of the ship. You'd just see a mess of lensing and colors, which it would be good to have as an option for anyone that wants that. But for me personally, I just like to see the stars drifting by. But I mean, the plan was always to include a different array of FTL effects that people can choose from. So if you don't want magic space clouds, you could turn them off and just see the stars. Or if you wanted extreme lensing, then you can see that instead. I'm more than happy to give players the choice. Yeah, I've read a couple of different takes on that as to whether or not the bubble will naturally accrete mass and create a death ray when you stop the ship, or whether or not that matter actually gets passed around the field and ejected out the back. I think the jury's still out on which one of those two would be more likely. Yeah, we did actually used to have lensing. It was messing with the windows. So in order to create lensing around the ship, what I did is I used a refraction material. So I had a transparent sphere around the ship, and I played with the refraction settings on the sphere to wobble everything and create the lensing. But because the glass in the windows is obviously also a transparent material, the refraction was affecting that as well. So the glass in the windows was wobbling in the frame at the same time as it was like lensing outside of the ship. And I never did find a solution to that, so I turned that off temporarily. But yeah, it would be nice to bring that back for sure. Yeah, I haven't read enough into it to know for sure. It also depends on the thickness of the shell of the bubble, because one of the things that was being discussed in terms of reducing the energy requirements for the FTL was to make the actual skin of the bubble like infinitesimally small, like we're talking like plank length kind of size, and that affects obviously the ability to accrete matter. So it's definitely an interesting one, and there's a reason we haven't built one yet. It's hellishly complicated. Where am I? Right, so let's make sure that this bit's happening. So when we update that, just want to see if it's actually passing these action messages or not. Yeah, if you check out the paper by Eric Lentz, he has apparently, although I don't understand the math behind it, removed the need for any kind of theoretical matter or negative mass by playing with the field geometry. So rather than just a sphere, he's got a very odd geometry that kind of folds back on itself. But apparently that removes the need for negative mass to create the field, which means that you can generate the field using only energy. So if you can put enough energy into the system, you can create both the compression and the expansion of space, which is that's the breakthrough that was needed, so that we don't need exotic matter to create the drive, although it doesn't solve the energy equation, or the energy requirements rather. It is. I think we've reduced it to the mass of Jupiter now, last I heard. Hey, Lurie. Yeah, I think for the most part, that probably applies more to shuttles than the main ship. The main ship being a mobile base is pretty much always in a vacuum. But for shuttles, yes, we will have we'll have to look at things like buoyancy with water, and whether or not the shuttle can fly around underwater. Although that said, we do expect to include multiple dimensional spaces as well. So there's no reason why we can't place the ship in like a fluidic type space. But we'll probably just treat that in terms of the physics, just with viscosity. So, the ship slows down much quicker, it turns much slower, and just, we'll tweak the numbers such that it's like flying through treacle. Yeah, take a look at Eric Lentz's paper and see how he describes it. Again, I don't know the math behind it.
Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete.
Yeah, we've discussed quarantine and how to handle that in the past. So when the probe comes up from a planetary surface, bringing something with it, the airlock that it enters before going into the probe room, that itself is a quarantine bay. So it will spray the outside of the probe down with like radiation and that sort of thing, just to decontaminate it. But we also want an element of risk there as well, so it'll never be fully isolated. So at some point you'll need to take the object out of the probe and take it to where it needs to go to be analyzed. So yeah, there will always be a point where you will be exposing the crew to that item. We'll have to have a think on that. That's perhaps something for the Pathfinder class, because it's little things like this where when we're actually actively performing research and we're out there in the field analyzing samples and things, the way the ship operates and how both people and materials move around the ship, we're going to learn a lot about the best ways of doing that. So lessons will be learned just through building and running this thing. So when it comes to the Pathfinder class, we'll be building the Pathfinder class with those lessons like having been learned. So as much as that's how it works in the game's lore, the Pathfinder class is always supposed to be all the lessons from the Magellan class put into a much more refined vessel, it actually works practically in reality as well. That there are things that we're learning along the way building this thing, where we think, right, you know, had I started this again from scratch, I would have done that differently. So, you know, we'll put those lessons into the Pathfinder class, and, you know, having some way of transporting and working on samples in an isolated environment is definitely one of the things we need to think of for the future. You're right, CSI, I didn't. Shall I do it now? Boop. It's gone. Cannot be clicked on by accident. Okay, so we did fire that, and then we did fire this. So that should have done everything we needed it to. Which means that the fault must be here. We're not setting that properly. Actually, where are we setting that? Okay, so we're clearing it there. Right, and we're setting it there. We're setting that when we actually create the object, so that means we're doing it from here, which means we're probably doing it here. Right. So, yeah, so we're passing on that variable there, which we're no longer setting, which means we need to run our check to see whether or not that has actually been scanned. Or do we just update that anyway? Because it would mean doing it from here, so we'd have to actually, no, it wouldn't be there, would it? It would be here, so we'd have to update it on this. So for each one of these, we'd have to add that. Which means we'd have to output it from there. question is, do we want to store that here, or do we want to calculate that as we go? I guess the biggest issue with calculating it as we go is that we need to perform this action. So we actually need to loop through our exploration data. This variable here, or this array rather, is going to grow exponentially as you explore. So literally every system you scan is another row in this array. So, 100 explored systems is 100 rows in the array, and 10,000 explored systems makes this array really big. So we need to loop it as infrequently as we possibly can, and as sparingly as we can. So what we could do then is rather than passing the data to the widget, we could work it out on the widget. So not bother with this and just do the loop on here. Thank you, Ian. Much appreciated. And have a good one. Yeah, definitely CSI. In fact, I'd go so far as to say, not even in memory. It'd be nice if we could actually write it locally. So if we create an SQLite database and write to it every time we update the exploration data, it's probably the better way to go about that. I mean, reading the array from memory is going to be rapid anyway, but yeah, because it's going to hold the SQL database in memory regardless, so either way it'll be held in RAM. But yeah, I have to see which of the two is quicker. Last time I tried using a local SQL or database, it was actually slower than just having a big chunky array, but yeah, we'll see. Yeah. So all I need really is a precursor to this. It's just to pass it the actual exploration data, which I don't have. So if we were to so if we make this one exploration data, and then we change the we don't even need to change the data type, we just need to make it an array. Right, so that gives us our array. And then all we need to do from there is then just do our same old looped array. So we do a for each with break. And then we need to identify which one we're working with. And just make sure we just update this every time everything else is updated. So on here, we just need to feed that variable. So pop that in there. Come on, see it. There we go. Yeah, so we just give it that data. So that should be always relevant and always up to date. And then every time we refresh this data, so that's when we build it from scratch. That. Okay, we're already doing it there, so what's that one? Okay, so with this one, I'm avoiding doing that unless we're doing a full refresh. Okay. Right, so that'll be why this is working on the long range, not the medium range, because we're not doing that bit first. So shove that out of the way. Pop that in there. Oh yeah, I've got to sort these ones out as well, actually. Do this the other way. Hey Neotastish, good morning. It's almost 10:30 in the PM here in the UK. Sector and large system object. Large system object. Why are they the same type? So loop the array, see if we get a matching location. If we do, don't need to do that. Store that, and then replace those ones. No, I didn't want to do that. Instead. Right, okay, that fixes all the errors. And one thing that we'll need doing actually is when it comes to this title line, rather than checking this boolean, we'll need to check the actual exploration level, the knowledge level. So I'll simply replace these with a knowledge level instead, and that should solve that, because we can just do a select on the integer, and depending on whether it's 1, 2 or 3, we can pick the relevant text field. So that's nice and straightforward. Same there. And then for this one, just grab our system bodies and then loop them as we were before. And that should be the same as it was then. Let's give that a quick try a minute. Okay, so that one. Same there. So something that I was concerned about initially is I was worried that if you increase sensor range, obviously you've got 3,500 list items here, and my concern is it was going to loop that array 3,500 times. But because of the way these list items work, it only actually does it when they render on screen. So that array only loops when you scroll, and as you can see, it's nothing. It's doing it so quickly it doesn't make any difference, which is nice. Yes, actually, I think this will be the last stream of 2024 because next Wednesday is the 1st. So, yeah, so we'll do a New Year's Day evening stream on Wednesday. Hang on, check I'm not going mad. Wednesday the 1st, yeah, so if we do a stream on the 1st, then there'll also be a competition stream as well. So, a job for Claire. She can set up the competition channel for the 1st. Although we'll see what everyone's availability is like, because it might be the case that we do the competition on Sunday, but we'll see where we're at. Right, so that's showing that. And so it's that, right? Okay, so they are all displaying correctly. You're all showing 1. Okay, that's 2, 2, 2. Right, so if I do a
Initiating long-range survey.
we should have 1 point of data on all the planets except 1.
Long-range survey complete.
Which we do not. Okay. So if we go to say that do a quick scan of that one. So it hasn't updated there or there. But let's see if it updates when I reload. Happy New Year, LL. Yep, last stream of the year. Yeah, so obviously we're not streaming New Year's Eve, we're streaming New Year's Day. I'm sure everyone's going to be far too busy on New Year's Eve. So that didn't scan the first time. Okay, and it hasn't scanned there. So if I do it again. Nope, still not scanning. I think there's definitely an order of operation problem here, because obviously that one scanned fine. Right, let's see if we can work out what is going on with that. so obviously we're not doing anything new, so we're definitely doing this one. So make sure we're actually identifying the right planet. Let's spit out its local coordinates just so that we can compare the two. But let's make it hang around longer so we've got time to prepare it. Time to read it. Right, we should see up here these coordinates. 856 blah de blah de blah. Yep. -125. Yep. 610. Yep. So it's definitely matching the right planet. Which is what we want. Okay. Okay, so we know that that bit's definitely working. So I suppose the question then is, are we, when we're getting a reference to this struct, is it actually updating that one, or is it holding some copy in memory somewhere? Thank you, Doodly Pop. Same to you. What I'll do actually is if we do another loop on this, so obviously we've just updated the array, that is obviously part of that array. So every, or rather 2 planets should have a knowledge level of 3. Oops, no, made that same mistake again. Yeah, so if we do this, then we should definitely see 2 3s and a bunch of 0s. Okay, so only the 1 3. Okay. Right, so what that is suggesting is that this isn't actually updating this array. I think it's updating a copy of it in memory somewhere. I wonder if we I mean, we could do that. So grab a reference to it. So we're working with a reference rather than that pin specifically. Try that a minute. I might be barking up the wrong tree, but give it a try. Yeah, still just the 1, 3 there. Do it the other way then. Perhaps this is a nested loop problem after all. So if we go back and do the thing that I actually stopped doing, which was storing the array index separately. But we're going to have to do that twice because we need to store this one as well. So if we do a local integer, I didn't want to do this because it's messy doing it like this. Right, so we're capturing the array index of our matching location, which is what that checks for. And then we need to do that again over here. Let's get rid of that a minute. So we've got a match there, then we need to get that array index as well. So we've got our array index for the matching location and a second array index for the matching planet and or star, which means we're no longer setting the members in the struct because there's no point. We're simply grabbing our references. No, we'll keep that for a minute. Which means basically here then, because we've set that as true, so we then need to get a reference from that one, and then we need to break that, and then get a reference to that one, and then we do set members there, where we set our knowledge level to 3. And then we simply update the rep notify. So we've identified our array indexes, and then we've used those array indexes to get references to everything in order to update that data within the array. I would have thought that this would be enough, but let's see whether that fixed it. Aha. So that was the problem. Having those nested loops broke the reference chain to the array. So the value that we were updating was a value in memory and not the actual value in the array. So that means that that's now 25% explored rather than the 12 that it was before. Right, okay. Let's just do this one just to rule out a fluke. Yep, that one is fine as well now. Okay, so they're all level 3. Alright, so I was about to say, do we need this double array index? But I guess we do. That does surprise me though, because I would have thought that that would be enough, because that is an actual reference to it, and then you just use that reference from that point on. But well, it works, so I'll leave it. Right, so I just want to make sure that this one works consistently, actually, because that was not consistent on an unscanned system. So let's just try that one. You'll do. Right, so nothing's been scanned, so we'll go to that planet there. And there should be no data at all for this yet. So we should see 10, then 11 array entries, I believe. or 11 and 12. No, that works. So the important thing is it's incremented the array by 1, which means we have generated the data, and it's reflected there as well that it's been done, which means it's there. And which one did I even do? Oh, that one, wasn't it? Yeah. And that's showing 10%. Okay. Yeah, exactly, CSI. All of which I've said during this one stream. Right, so we can get rid of some of this log spam. Be gone with you. Okay, so this looks messy, but it is fairly succinct in what it's actually doing. So in a nutshell, we're either setting the exploration, or rather the knowledge level of a planet individually, or updating an entire system's worth. And I suppose I should really sort of squeeze that in properly. Yep. There we go, it's a bit neater. Right then, step away from the code. Right, so I think we've probably got the same problem happening here as well, where we are setting members in a struct, which is part of an array, which we are not explicitly referencing from there. So we're going to have to do the same thing, annoyingly. So we need a local integer, which we will set here. Oh, is it going to be windy? Luckily the Starlink's on quite a long cable, so it can blow quite far away before it stops working. We were promised snow down here for Christmas and it never happened. Right, this one's actually slightly different because rather than picking out an individual array item, I'm actually updating all of them. So why don't we try what I tried last time? Because if we break this from the reference rather than that, then we're... See, that should work. Should work and actually work are of course two different things. Right, one level 3.
Initiating long-range survey.
We should have lots and lots of 1 pips and one with the 3 pips.
Long-range survey complete.
Did it not update or did it just not do it? I think it's opting for not having done it. Right. Fine, do it this way. So in actuality, we don't need to do that at all, do we? Because once we've worked out which system we're working with, that is no longer relevant. So actually, we still need that one. So yeah, so literally all we're doing then is we're identifying an array index for our matching system. We're then getting a hard reference to that array index. And then we can loop the array. So we can loop our system bodies at that point. Which means that goes up there. That needs to come down there. So we're not getting that one, are we? We're getting that one. So we're pulling a reference there and we're setting a reference there. So again, that should all completely work. And then the completed pin from this one will just carry on as per normal there. Again, it's not how I want to do it, but if it works, that's what we're running with.
Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete.
Okay, so did it not do it, or did it not reference that it's done it? Right. Spam time. Claire is quite Bristolian, to be fair. She was born and raised in Bristol. I was born and raised in Somerset, which is why she's got the Somerset twang. I definitely will. Whenever Claire does her computer voice, it comes across being quite sexy, so I think we should get her to do it. Whenever I do it, she goes all like, "Oh no, Mr. Frodo." All hobbits are from Somerset. Hobbiton is based on Somerset. Oh yeah, that's true, Firstus. You're not allowed to find anything seductive anymore. That's a point. Isn't this technically your wedding night? It's true. If it helps, I fell asleep on my wedding night. I was joking with Claire yesterday. I've now reached proper geekdom. I have a thermos. I mean, I'm just one step away from Train Spotter now. Oh yeah, sorry, afternoon. Excellent. To be fair, we have a sort of a historic railway line that runs alongside the property here. Well, I say that, it's the other side of a field, but you know, it's within visual range. And because it's a historical railway line, they just run steam trains up and down it. And it's actually the reason I bought this house. About 7 years ago now it was. We were viewing the property, and I was standing in the front garden, and just purely by chance, as I was standing there, a steam train came past on the other side of the field, and I just turned to the estate agent and went, "Yep, I'll have it." I like steam trains. It's brilliant in summer because if the wind's blowing in this direction, it literally sounds like the train's coming up the road, like right in front of the house. They're deceptively loud. Unless I can get about a month's work done in 3 days, yes, next year.
Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete.
I don't know whether I have, to be honest.
Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete.
Right, okay, so that explains that. Then it's not setting the value. Oh, okay, cool. If I'm ever over that way, definitely worth checking out. We do have the Flying Scotsman come through here, which is quite cool. They do it about once a year, I think. Don't know, Cam. It's a good question. Depends on the multiplayer aspect of it, because obviously we're using Steam servers for things like matchmaking and hosting the session for the multiplayer. So a single player, yes, it could definitely go on GOG, but I don't know anything about their networking backend, so I'd have to look into that. The sandbox is completely DRM free, so technically it could be uploaded anywhere. No worries. Yeah, a dedicated server is definitely on the cards. It'll be a separate entry on Steam, but we'll just have a headless client. I think in order for this to work as a reference, I think I need to do it via set members. So we'd need to loop through. No, so we'd need to make an array and then replace the one that's there. Single player doesn't have a session running, although it's a very, very simple process to start one. In fact, one of the things I want to do at some point is blur the line between single player and multiplayer so that you can start a single player game. And just like Minecraft, if you suddenly decide that you want to invite some friends in, you can just open that game up for players to join. So it then basically becomes a multiplayer game at any point arbitrarily that you press the button. So you can start and stop the server using the host controls from within the game. Really easy to do, so I see no reason not to do it, to be honest. Local array of wildcards is what I want. Local array of wildcards, and then we need to obviously, yes, no we don't. No, we don't want that at all. We need to add, don't we? Alright, so if we were to set that there like that, right, and then we stick that there like that, work that in there like that. Okay. And then all we need to do here is, rather than setting members, if we so if we break that one, obviously we need to carry across all of its data. So the RED is the same. I'll get rid of the scanned boolean because that's no longer needed. Alright, and then the knowledge level is either going to be what it already is. So say if it's level 3, then it will keep level 3. If it's a 0, it will become level 1, and so on. Okay, so we build our local array, and then we set that from our reference there. And of course that should then be updated in order to replicate it out. Right, let's try that. It's a lot of hoops to jump through.
Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete.
Okay, there we go. So yeah, so that's now showing 40%, and we're definitely seeing level 1 on those ones, and not that one because it's already been scanned, so that's good. It didn't overwrite that data. Yeah, messy indeed. Yeah, so the issue here is, again, it's once you start doing this, you're working with a copy rather than the actual reference. So even though we're pulling a reference, it becomes a copy once you start looping through it, which is news to me, but there we go. And yeah, so we need to set members on the reference. So we can actually do this up here, rather than doing this and grabbing a copy, we could have actually done this here, but to coin a phrase, it's working, so I'll leave it. But yeah, in terms of future optimization, I can get rid of that local integer, so we don't need to actually do that. That doesn't... What does it? No, that probably doesn't need to be a reference because that is. So we can set members from that one directly. Yeah. Yeah, I think I am trying to build a bit of a library for, working with some of these data points. But a lot of them have unique data, so I can't create, one macro to rule them all, so to speak. But yeah, if a database is comparable in speed, then I would prefer working with that because they're much easier to work with than having to sort of juggle arrays like this. But yeah, and yeah, I think you're right, Binary. I think it's exactly what it's doing. It's dereferencing it, sticking a copy in memory so that it can do its loop. And of course, from that point on, you're working with a copy of the data, not the original array. So when you change things in it, it's not reflected in the source array, which is a pain in the ass, but that fixes it. So we got there in the end. And of course, because this is a macro and because this is shared with the medium range sensors, it means that the medium range sensors should work just as efficiently. He says with complete confidence, knowing that something will probably break. But let's try it and see. Yeah, it worked. What a surprise. showing 70 there. We're showing 2 blips all the way down there. And I guess if we fly over to one of... No, I didn't want to do that. We definitely need a cancel button on this. What was I doing? Yeah, so if we fly over to that one and check the short range, yeah, it's showing us 2 blips, so that's good. That's not good. Okay, that's interesting. How is it able to show 140? Is it because I did that more than once? Is this going to show 210? 220, yeah. Right, so, okay. Right, okay. Right. I think I see what's happening there. Or do I? So we're not clearing this array before we start working with it. I think that's the problem there. So to make this even more spaghettified,
Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete.
okay, it didn't make it any worse. I'm picturing it too. Right, yeah, that one. So 67%. And if we redo the survey, hopefully it will stay at 67%. Yeah, it's because we weren't clearing the array. It does mean that this system is forever broken in my data now. I would have to purge the save file to fix that. But yeah, that one's working now. And just out of interest, actually, if I obviously they've all got 2 pips. If I
Initiating long-range survey.
do a long range, it should technically do nothing to them.
Long-range survey complete.
Does it still say 67%? Yeah. Good. Okay, let's scan that one. Now it's on 73%. Okay, and we're properly showing what we should see there. Let's just rescan it to make sure it doesn't go up a percentage point. Still 73. Okay. Right. Well, I would say that that is working. Yeah, commenting the code regularly and accurately helps a huge amount. Right, so let's pick a system we haven't explored yet and go through the whole process. So nothing, 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 nothing. So let's do our long range first. Obviously, actually no, before I do that, let's fix the headings. Right, so this monstrosity is ugly but working, as is this, ugly but working. So we now need to... So there's a couple of text fields on here now that we need to fix. A thought has occurred. So we're obviously dealing with a single planet or star at this point, and we're pulling out our knowledge level from the data, having worked out what system we're working with here. But obviously at this point we're still working with the whole system because it's still got obviously the system bodies there. So we need to know which system body we're pulling the name from on here. Obviously, previous to the way we're doing it, we were just firing some booleans across and it was nice and simple. But now we're doing it on a per object basis. We need to know which object we're reading from. So that needs moving up here. Right, so this one's all about identifying that, and that's all about identifying that. So rather than doing that, or more to the point, rather than working them out, let's move that down there a minute. And we can get rid of that and that, because we still need to know this. So that's the bit we need. And then we just need to turn that into a variable. So rather than doing all of this, so if that is true, then we need to promote that to a variable, and then break our loop. to make sure that we have the actual exploration level set, knowledge level rather. Right, so that's the full data, which we pull out our matching location. We then take our matching location and we work out which planet or which object we're looking at. Right, and then from there we have our knowledge level, which we can then use across the board to do all the rest of the stuff we need to do. So like here, for example, we don't need that anymore. We just need our knowledge level, which means that needs to have knowledge level as an input. As does this one, although to be perfectly honest, why am I even feeding it data? Why don't I just like put them there? I think rather than doing a select like that, we change that to an integer and we whack that in there. So if it's 1, we want the level 1. If it's 0, we want the level 0. We also need to cater for 2 and 3. To be honest, I don't think any of these need to be necessarily unique. Although I guess everything other than the stars do, so so if long range is true, they might be labeled wrong because, hang on, so if long range is true, then we check to see whether there's medium range. And if medium range is true, give it its level 1 name. Otherwise, it's level 0. So yeah, so that should be level 1. That makes more sense. Right, then we can delete all of them. Oops. And then just connect this one up to all the rest of them. And the reason we need 2 different versions here is because things like planets have the option for an unknown, whereas space locations do not. So generally speaking, doing it this way really simplifies the whole thing. Yeah, so all we need is our object type and then the knowledge level. And then that's it. That's all we need. It annoys me when I can't put a straight pin in there, like can't make that a straight line. Right, that's simpler. And a similar deal here. Feels too simple, but that should be all that's needed. Right then, where else were we using that? Oh yeah, here. So that can go. Replace it with that. Don't need that pin there. Okay, and that can just get plugged in there like that. see you, CSI. I didn't see you leaving. Too engrossed in the code. Daniel Jackson, yes, I will do, along with other beeps and blips. I'm not sure to what extent yet, but yeah. Okay, we're definitely seeing the scan data there, and we're seeing it there, and we're seeing it there. Right, let's try that one. So unknown, 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 with scan required.
Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete.
Okay, we've got our name, got our type, got our pip. All good. We're showing 33% there. Let's go and scan that one in more detail. So medium range looks the same. Do a short range scan. Okay, looks good there, looks good there, looks good there. And it's taken us up to 43%. Jolly good. I think that's actually everything for the doing of the scanning and the saving of the scanning. So the next thing to do is I need to finish off that, so it's not all garbled and overlaid. I need to add the comparison to Sol here. I wasn't going to bother, but all the other ones have a comparison to Sol, so I may as well, just for the sake of it. I tried various different ways of laying this data out, and justifying it like this is the way that is the most readable. I tried having like this left justified and only that left justified, and having this bit right justified, but having these on the left, that on the right, and these two justified to the middle there, it makes it the most readable, so I'll leave it like that. And also separating out the actual unit of measurement makes that easier to understand what it is you're looking at as well. So that will be the same for the photosphere stuff. So all the different percentages and things, they'll be laid out the same as this. And the same with the planets. Oh yeah, the star will need its orbital stuff as well when it has a barycenter. But yeah, so the same here. The orbital characteristics and the physical characteristics, they're all laid out the same way, which should make everything nice and easy to read. Obviously that needs to read atmosphere, and that'll be laid out the same way as well. And then the surface data, that will be some of the life stuff that we start describing there. Okay, well, with that all working, I'll call it there because it's been 3.5 hours. I need to go for a stretch. Oh, because I got all creaky. We're getting there. We're getting there. And again, once I've done this here, so I've got those two to do, the one for the star, the one for the planets. Once both of those are done, because I'll make them into macros, the medium range and the short range will automatically be done as well because they'll be reading from the same macro. And I think that's it really for the sensors for now. And then from that point, it's just a case of finishing off some of the paneling around engineering, and then just doing the tutorial for this, because obviously the tutorials can be completely different now. And then the build can go live, assuming there are no glaring bugs. So yeah, we are counting down the days. Oh, see you, Binary. Didn't see you heading off either. Sorry, it's me being too engrossed in what I'm doing. Right, so have a good one, everyone. For those of you who are not still hungover on New Year's Day, we'll be doing a New Year's Day stream in the evening as usual. Where's Big Me? There's Big Me. Yeah, so I shall see you all on the 1st at the usual time, if you can make it. If not, then don't worry, we will be continuing these bi-weekly streams all of 2025. And yeah, hopefully we'll have this public build out done as soon as possible. So have a good one. Enjoy your new year. Don't get too drunk. And yeah, I shall see everyone in 2025. So bye for now.